Awesome. We will go ahead and get started. So thank you again for joining us. If you joined any of our other webinars, you kind of have an idea of how this works, but thanks for joining us on this. What is today? This Wednesday. My name is Casey Johnstone. I work with Duke's new student programs. Super excited to host and have everybody joining us today. So we're in the advising and registration series of our STS. Yesterday we had Trinity. Today we are all focused on Pratt, and tomorrow we'll be talking about pre-health as well. So if you've joined any of the other webinars, you kind of know how this works. At the very bottom of your screen, there is a Q&A box with like two little message bubbles. Feel free to click on that and start typing away your questions. I'll be moderating the session today, so I'll be asking your question out loud. And then our lovely panelists will be providing responses. We do have two behind the scenes folks who you don't see right now, but they also will be there to type in answers to questions. I do want to give the caveat real quick. We're going to try and keep things as general as possible because we want this webinar to help the vast majority. So if you have a really specific question that might be better answered one-on-one, we might not ask it out loud, but we might type a specific answer for you or encourage you to reach out to somebody. So I'm not avoiding your question on purpose, but I just want to make sure that we can address things on a case-by-case basis as needed. But yeah, I will go ahead and pass the floor over to our panelists if you want to introduce yourself.
Yes, hi everyone. My name is Carmen Rawls. I'm one of the 3 academic deans in Pratt. I'm the assistant dean for advising and undergraduate research and outreach. I direct 2 summer programs. One is the Pratt Fellows Research Program for our Pratt students in senior year who are involved in research for a year and a half. Also here today, joining us behind the scenes is Dean McMillian. She's the Assistant Dean for Advising and Student Affairs, and she'll be answering your questions on the Q&A. So I'm glad to start answering any questions you may have.
Awesome. And just as a reminder, this session is being recorded, so we'll be posting it later to the Duke New Student Programs YouTube channel in case you miss anything or join late or have to leave early. The first question is, do we need to meet with our dean before registration day?
No, you don't. This fall, we've provided a lot of information, especially if you attended one of our previous webinars where we indicated which courses will be needed during your first year in Pratt, especially during the fall. If you do have questions and would like to speak to your academic dean, you can do so during DropIn Advising sessions. We're offering quite a few, and I can share a slide with the links. We still have 2 more to go this week. It's from 10 a.m. to noon on July 8 and 9. And I don't know if you want me to show.
Sure, have it pulled up. Go ahead.
If we just share that slide. So here you would see the Zoom links by Dean, and we've had quite a few attend our DropIn Advising, and if you have questions, you can also email us, and we'll be happy to answer specific questions as well.
Awesome. We do have a couple of questions that people submitted ahead of time. And so while we wait for some folks to type questions in the Q&A in this Zoom live, I'll go ahead and go to those questions. So the first question is, it's about AP score. So I have a 5 on AP chemistry, but don't want to jump into organic chemistry as a freshman. Any advice on what their chemistry sequence should be in order to satisfy potential med school requirements?
Okay, for med school requirements. Well, first, I would recommend visiting pre-health advising once they arrive from Duke. On the other hand, BME majors, for example, require 2 chemistry courses. So if you're considering BME, you can consider taking Chem 201 or 210, but you can also take it in a following semester and take another of our courses that are recommended for the fall first. So all our Pratt students will be taking EGR 101, which is first year design, a math class, depending on their AP, EGR 103 or ComSci 201, again, if depending on their programming experience. And if they don't want to take Chem 101, they could take writing. If they're assigned writing, then of course they can do it during their registration window. But if they're not assigned, they can still add writing 101 during DropIn. Otherwise, they can also consider taking, if they're pre-med, they can consider taking biology 201 if they have the Chem AP.
Awesome. Next question is, when will we have to declare our engineering majors? How about non-engineering majors if we want to double major?
Sure. During the first year, we really want our students to explore, even if, if they have already a set mind, which is their planned major. We would like for them to explore and start taking their classes before deciding. So the earliest they can declare their major is at the end of their first year. And we would like for them to declare before the end of the second year. And at the same time, they can declare their second major, even if it's Trinity or in Pratt.
Awesome. So next question is, for Engineering 101, EGR 101, do we need to be in a lecture and lab section? Oh, it disappeared. Do we need to be in a lecture and lab section with the same professor?
Yes, I think in EGR 101 at least, they're going to be linked. That's why that will happen. In EGR 103, they'll have to actually enroll separately. But they need both components in order to be in the class.
Awesome. So we got a couple of questions that relate to either being a Trinity student and wanting to explore Pratt, or kind of just being able to keep options open. So what advice would you give for, I still want to keep my options open in terms of my course schedule and pursuing engineering. Is it possible to register for engineering courses as a Trinity student? Are there any special procedures or advice that you would give?
Yes, if you're interested in Pratt, I would say to contact one of us and request to enroll in EGR 101, which is the first year design. It's a first year design course, hands-on type of experience. It's a design challenge, and it's teamwork. So they'll decide which is the project they'll be working on, and they'll be working on that design throughout the semester. And I think it's a great class to start experiencing the engineering thought process. And there will be spots available for Trinity students who are interested in Pratt. They just have to let us know. And if, depending on space availability, they can take the class in the fall or they take it in the spring.
Great, thank you. So this question came up yesterday, but I think it's still important to note. How does registration work if you want to be on a wait list for a class? So specifically for first year students.
Exactly. So unfortunately, we don't allow our first semester students to enter waitlist. We really want you to either be in the class, or if you need a class, to let us know and we'll assist you. We have always on DropIn Advising help session during orientation week for any student that is missing a required class that hasn't been able to schedule it in. So that will be the best process for this semester. In subsequent semesters, when a class is already at capacity, you can enter the wait list. And the way it works is that if space becomes available, they will be enrolling students in the order that they've been on the wait list.
Great. And kind of a question that ties in with that, it says, if I've not, or let me make sure I'm reading it correctly. If I have to put classes on hold prior to registration, will I be at a disadvantage?
Sorry, could you repeat that again?
Well, it says if I have not put my classes on hold prior to registration, will I be at a disadvantage?
Maybe they're referring if they haven't put the class in the shopping cart before enrolling.
I think
Maybe.
so. Maybe that's
Okay.
what I read it as.
Yeah. I would say no. I mean, right now, students I recommended, put in the shopping cart your ideal schedule of the sections you really would like to enroll in, of the classes that you need. But there might be a chance you won't be able to get in those sections, so you would just have to go back during registration and add the right section into your shopping cart and then validate that schedule and register for the class. So you shouldn't be in a disadvantage at all if you don't include that section beforehand.
All right. So the next question is, can you talk a little bit about the Pratt Fellows Research Program? When can research happen during the school year / summer?
Yes, I'm happy to talk about the Pratt Fellows Research Program. I'm very proud of that program. Traditionally, students have applied to the program in junior fall and start their research project in junior spring. They stay at Duke campus for 10 weeks during the summer in a research experience where they would make a lot of progress in their research, and then enroll in 2 independent studies in senior year to continue the research for the additional year. And then they would do a final presentation during senior spring before they graduate. Now we are adding more flexibility to that program, and we are allowing students that are sophomore to apply in their sophomore spring. And if faculty allow, instead of doing 3 semesters on a summer, they might be able to do 4 semesters of independent study. So independent study courses are actually a course credit, and any independent study done in their junior senior year can count as an advanced elective from their major. So that's an easy way to add research to your schedule. But there are additional programs that students can get involved with earlier on, like Fast Connections. I have students in first year and second year that become involved in that program, and it's a multidisciplinary, multi-age type of research environment. There are working in teams, and they could be students from across Duke in different fields and different ages. So that's another opportunity if you want to start earlier. You don't have to wait until the last 2 years of your bachelor's degree.
Thank you for that. That sounds like a cool opportunity. So the next question is, what happens if I'm not able to get into the classes I need to take, for example, math? Who should I reach out to?
Reach out to your academic dean.
Sure.
Will definitely help you. Yes. Yeah, just reach out to your academic dean. I will be happy to assist you getting to any required class you need.
Awesome. Next question, is it mandatory to sign up for both the EGR 103 lecture and lab, or just the lecture?
So you have to enroll in both. And that's a very good question. And also students that are enrolling in Chemistry 101, they also have to enroll in the lecture and the lab. Yeah, so that's a question that I've had come up during DropIn Advising, which is very good. If you need EGR 103, 101, and you see an L component, that means you have to enroll both. You have to have in your schedule the lecture component and the lab component.
Awesome. All right, next question is, if we want to take Writing 101 in the fall, which class would you recommend pushing to second semester? And they specifically mention Chem 101 or Math 218 too.
Okay, well, if you're assigned Writing 101, let's see. We would like all our students to take math in their first semester and chemistry. So if we have EGR 101, math, writing, there's really not a lot of, the question would be EGR 103. So if you're assigned writing, you should take writing. If you're not assigned, you should enroll in EGR 103 or in CompSci 201. If you're a BME, you definitely should take Chem 101 in this fall. If you're ECE, you could do either Chem 101 or EGR 103. But I would rather have all students take chemistry in the fall if they require chemistry, because they have to take physics in the spring.
Great, thank you so much. Yeah, and there are some courses that are only available in the fall semester or only available in the spring semester, so it can make it a little tricky sometimes.
That's correct, especially with physics. Physics 151 is spring only, and then the sophomore fall will be 152. So it's better to keep the sequence.
Awesome. We have, there's a question that kind of dives a little bit deeper into the shopping cart experience. So the question is, as long as I'm able to add a class to my shopping cart, does that mean I'm eligible to enroll for the class once registration starts?
No. So after you add it to the shopping cart, you would have to validate your schedule. Then right before you register, that's when the system will be checking if there's a scheduling conflict, if you have the prerequisites and that sort of thing. There are some courses that have harder prerequisites than others, but the question will be no. So it's the shopping cart is one experience, registration will be another.
Yeah. It might be helpful to think of the shopping cart as like, if there are, let's say there's 10 seats, just for example's sake. If there are 10 seats, there might be 30 people that have that specific course in their shopping cart because 30 people thought it sounded really interesting. But at the end of the day, there's only 10 seats. So the first 10 to get in are the ones who are going to get it. So shopping cart is a great way to explore classes and see what you're interested in and kind of jog your memory when it does come time to registration. And hopefully you hit register and everything in your shopping cart is approved and it's great and super easy. But that is not the case all the time. And so it's important to have some backup plans. Yeah, hopefully that's helpful. Let's see. Okay, next question is, I'd like to take Writing 101 in the fall semester, but I didn't get a message in Duke Hub. Can you request to be placed in Writing 101 in the fall?
No, you can't, but you can add the class after DropIn starts. So after all the students that were actually assigned writing are given a chance to enroll, then you'll be able to get into the seats that are still available.
Awesome. And can you maybe talk a little bit more about like the registration window and the drop add period and what that looks like?
Well, during your registration window, you'll be able to definitely enroll in the classes. Like you said, all the classes in your shopping cart that your ideal schedule, you'll be able to enroll. Otherwise, I've told students, like you said, have backup plans. So if you need to go back and pick a section that it wasn't the one that you preferred, but still is the class you need, you can just enroll in that. After, let's say half of the first year students have a registration window one day and the second half in the next day. After both windows close, then the dropout period begins. And that's when you can make changes to your schedule. We would say, be careful with the changes. Just make the changes that are needed. Don't try to create your ideal schedule during dropout. I would just say, make sure you have the classes you need. Because when you release one seat in your section, then another student during dropout can pick it up, and you don't want to lose a class that you needed, like math or EGR 101 or chemistry or EGR 103. In terms of writing, that's when you'll be able to, if you weren't assigned, you can add a writing course. So that's more or less the gist. This year, dropout is going to be longer because we know that there are a lot of students who are waiting on AP credits, especially for math. And depending on your math scores, you'll be able to get into different math courses. And we know that quite a few of you will have to make changes during dropout to your schedule to get the right math course in your schedule. And as a reminder, if you score a 5 on Math PC, you'll be able to get into Math 218D-2. If you score a 4, then the right course for you will be 122.
Great, thank you. I don't know how you keep track of all of those numbers in your head. All right, next question. If we're trying to take a class that requires an AP score as a prereq, but the scores haven't come in yet, can we still register for it? Or do we have to wait until drop ads since the scores don't come until after registration?
Yes, you should wait until you know your score. That way you're building the schedule that is correct for you. I've told students that if they're waiting on an AP credit, to first enroll in classes that they're sure they need and will take. Usually the question that is arising is regarding math. So just make sure to enroll in your other courses. And as soon as you know your AP score, then you can add that course in.
Great. There was a follow-up question for registration that talks about if you have a course that requires a lab section and say you forget to add the lab, will the course go through? Like, how does that work?
So the course will go through, and during the first week, you'll learn, let's say if it was chemistry, a science class, they'll be reaching out. The department will verify that you're enrolled in all the right components, and they'll just remind you. But I want you to be proactive, and if you have questions, to let us know if you're enrolled in all the right classes. But otherwise, just make sure if they both appear on your schedule. So that's an easy check you can do in Duke Hub after your registration goes in.
Great. Next question is back to Writing 101. Do certain majors need to enroll in specific Writing 101 class topics? And they give the example of backstage science, preventing pandemics, etc.
Yeah, so now you have the option of getting into any Writing 101 section you're most interested in. I did notice there are some sections that have some spots kind of separated for one school or the other, just to give opportunity for students to be enrolled. But you can select any Writing 101 section you would like.
All right, next question. Is Calc 2 called Math 112 or Math 122? According to the course catalog, according to the course catalog, Math 122 is transfer credit only. Right.
So that's a very good question on math sequence and our new math sequence. So there was a change in our sequence in the past year, trying to improve the transition of the students into math topics. So right now, let's see where to begin. Right now, it's the sequence is Math 111, Calc 1, 112, Calc 2, which is also labeled 122 in the fall, because 122 is Calc 2 for students that have Math AB credit or Math PC score of 4 AP credit. And the difference, again, between 112 and 122 is that 112 was designed for students that take 111 at Duke. Then the third will be multivariate calculus, which right now is going to be Math 219, and students that are enrolled in come with AP credits with Math 21 and 22 will start in 218D-2, which is linear algebra, matrices, and vectors. And then in the spring, they would take 219. And all sequences end with Math 353, which is ordinary and partial differential equations.
Thank you.
If I should have, that slide also, hopefully it will be easier. But we did update the math sequence on our website that has the Pratt program requirements. So I'm really happy to add that to the chat so that everyone can have a visual of the new sequence, and also explains previous sequences. And that's where I know some of the questions arise, because if they refer to departmental handbooks, the math sequence has not been updated yet. So they should refer to our website instead.
Yeah, if you post that in the chat, I can definitely, I can share the link as well in the recording. That way people can access it. The next question that we have, are we allowed to, are we allowed to only register for 3 classes during registration and then add our math class during drop add once we get our AP scores?
Well, you can enroll in 4 classes during your registration window, but if you have to update the math, you can do it during drop add. So you have the option of enrolling in the math you think you're going to be taking, or the one you have credit for. And then if you receive a higher credit, let's say you're not sure you're going to receive 4 or a 5 on your math BC, you can add math 111 to your schedule. But the truth is, it definitely will depend on your AP score. So you have the option of having a 111 now, and changing it during drop add, or just adding your math as soon as you are sure which is the math you need during drop add. You have a lot of time, because I believe AP scores arrive before the end of the month, and drop add is extended until officially until the 2nd week of class, but you should finalize your schedule before classes start in the fall. Hopefully, by the end of orientation week, everything will be set. And if by that time you have a problem, you can stop by during orientation, DropIn Advising, and we will help you finalize your schedule.
So register for math and change it if needed.
Exactly.
Okay. Yes. So don't not register for math.
Correct.
Next question is again about registration. So would you recommend enrolling into all of my courses at once on registration day, or enroll into classes one by one? Additionally, if I try to enroll all at once and one of my classes can't go through, would I get rejected or enrolled into my other classes?
I think you will receive a message. Definitely enroll in all your classes as soon as possible during the first day. You might have to go back if the section that you had selected had reached capacity. So the system will let you know which one it will be. So you would select the ones that get the green light, and then go back and add the remaining courses during the same day.
Awesome. Next question is, who can we ask questions about more specific? So like which math class to take?
You can talk to your academic dean during DropIn Advising, and we still have, like I mentioned earlier, DropIn Advising tomorrow and Friday between 10 and noon.
Awesome. There's a question here. I'm not sure if you know the answer to it. It's, what time does registration close on the 19th? Is there a specific end time?
That's a good question that I don't know.
Okay, we had some folks on the back end trying to do some research to find that answer for you, whoever asked that, and we can't seem to find it. So we can follow up about that, but as of right now, we aren't sure what the answer is. But ad drop begins the next day, so I'm assuming at the end of the day, but don't quote me on that, even though there's going to be a recording of this.
I would assume that this year, I mean, drop ad starts as the last window closes. So yeah, I would think, but I don't know what time, if there's any gap at all. That's a good question to look up. Yeah.
So the next question is there a lab and lecture section for EGR 103? Where could I find the lab section in the course catalog? The lecture is the only section available under the title EGR 103L.
So the lab section is EGR 103L9.
Okay. All right, next question. If we end up getting a 5 on BC exam, is it okay to not have math in the fall and wait until the spring or even sophomore year?
Now, all Pratt students should have math in the fall. I think it will be well, first, we want all of our students to be in math in the fall, and second is to your advantage. The following semesters are going to be, you'll start seeing classes that are calculus based, like Physics 151, and it will be to your advantage to have that background, strengthen your math background as early as possible.
Awesome. All right, I'm scanning the Q&A to make sure we haven't missed anything. I think we've gotten, yeah, follow-up question to on the 20th, does drop ads start at a specific time? We can certainly do some digging and hope to have a response to you by the end of this webinar. Let me switch back over because I believe we're out of questions for now in the Q&A box. Let me switch back over to the questions that were submitted ahead of time and make sure that I'm getting answers to those. Talked about that.
Oh, here we got a response that drop ad begins at 12 a.m. on Tuesday, July 20th.
Perfect. Okay, so at midnight is drop ad. So I'm assuming that means the registration window ends at 11:59 on the 19th. Jaden, that is an excellent question. I'm assuming, yes, that is Eastern time. I'm assuming. All right. Yes, that is Eastern time. So 12 midnight Eastern time is when drop ad begins. All right, next question. Does Math 111 have a lab?
I believe so. Yes, I think it's Math 111L.
And maybe a clarification question might be good to ask, or maybe talk through. How do you know if a class that you're registering for has a lab or a discussion or any of that?
Yes, so all classes that have a discussion will have a D in the label, and the ones that have a lab have an L. So for example, Chem 101 is DL. So it has both. It has a lecture, a discussion, and a lab. So Math 111 does have a lab too.
There's a question, one of the ones that was submitted ahead of time. It's talking about like the process of registration, and I think it might be helpful, or maybe this might be a good chance to plug the ETeam. If you could talk a little bit about the ETeam and who they are and what they do and how to get connected.
Yes, so let me also look for the link so we can provide the link as a reference. So the ETeam, so as we have mentioned earlier in earlier webinars, each student is going to have an advising team that will assist them during the 4 years. They have their academic dean, they'll have a faculty advisor that will help them with registration as soon as the mid-fall semester for the spring course selections. And they also have peer advisors, which are the ETeam, which are upperclassmen in engineering from different areas across all majors that do Pratt. And they can give you advice from the student perspective. So for example, they can tell you about some suggestions for social science or electives within their major or in Trinity. They can also talk about some extracurricular opportunities that are available, some professional student chapters. They can tell you about competitions. They can tell you about e-socials and other social activities and gatherings where you can start increasing your network, meet other students, and get involved in other areas outside of the classroom that are still involved with Pratt. And they're easier to reach. So if you look at if you visit their website, they have the contact information of the students and their background, and they're organized by major. They also host activities, a social activity during orientation week that I'm sure you guys will receive information.
Awesome. And I did get a message from Dean McMillan about they're in the process of selecting ETeam right now. So we don't have specific ETeam names yet, but that is in the process. And hopefully we will have some ETeamers join us during the Peer Connections webinar that happens later in July. That way you'll have an opportunity to ask them your questions and get to know them a little bit. Another question that came in is, there are some home courses in that course catalog. I'm wondering if Pratt students can take them. I'm assuming house course.
Yeah, that have credit house courses, I imagine. So those courses, you can enroll in them. Just note that they do not satisfy any major requirement or credit requirement. They're really more so that you have the opportunity of learn something that is of interest within the house. Most of the house courses have a lot of student involvement. There's some that are faculty teaching the course, but they don't have to be. So you can take them, it just won't satisfy any credits.
Great, thank you. Let's see. Looks like the only unanswered question in the Q&A box right now is there a lab section for Math 218-2?
So Math 218D-2, actually, it just has a discussion. So it would be the lecture and a discussion section. No lab.
Awesome. Ooh, we just had a really good question come in. What are some recommended ways to explore which major to pursue in engineering?
That is a great question. I would say definitely one of the simplest ways that students will go through developing their career path would be through coursework. But others start exploring during the summer, they start searching for internships. They definitely start browsing the internet. Each department, each major of Pratt has their own website where it includes a ton of information on research that the faculty of their department are doing. And you can start looking at different research interests. Also, I would say get involved with student chapters. They have competitions, they have other type of activities where you can learn more. So just be open and start attending information sessions. Each department also has nights in which they'll provide introductions to their major and other type of those activities. Just pay attention and you would start learning a lot about Pratt in different ways.
That was a great question. Next question is, what are some engineering internships possible for freshman summer? Or where should we look for these resources?
I would say search in the Career Center. They have a website and they are able to assist you as early as first-year students to find some internships. And they can also provide advice on resumes and other type of opportunities. If later on you're interested in internships or research within Pratt or within Duke, there are different websites like the Undergraduate Research Service Office and Muser, where you can start searching for opportunities. Like I mentioned before, Best Connections. Programs at Duke, there are also some programs that run through the summer, like Data Plus, Code Plus, there's one in math. So there will be different places that you can look into. But first year, especially if you are inclined to start with an industry type of internship, I would say start with a career center.
Awesome. It looks like we've got about 15 minutes left. I don't see any more questions as of yet. So if you have anything that has not been answered yet or any questions you want to ask, feel free to pop them in the chat. I know we've talked about multiple topics, but is there any piece of, do you have any piece of advice or is there any information that you would want to share that you haven't had the opportunity to yet?
Let's see, for my first year students, I would say, I mean, there have been quite a few very good questions already of things that I would like to recommend students to be watching out for. So beyond that, it's very good. Well, something that hasn't come up is study abroad. So students that are interested in study abroad, you can definitely start browsing the Global Education Office website for all the different information and programs available. There are programs that run through semesters, but also there are some that run during summer. And I usually get the question, when do I start planning for that? Plan a year before you plan to go away, so that we can select together the courses you take before you're in the study abroad program, during the program, and when you return, so you remain on track. I think that's one of the questions I get the most.
That's a good one. It is something you have to plan like far in advance. It's not what I would have assumed.
And then something else that also I think, especially at the beginning, good to keep in mind is the directors of academic engagement. So many students have a lot of different interests and they want definitely to take advantage of opportunities at Duke, but you have to be selective because you can't do everything because there's time restrictions and you need to focus on the things you really want to do. So I would say, you can visit a director of academic engagement and they can sit down with you and guide you and make a holistic plan so that you can enroll in the classes you would like and also take advantage of other opportunities.
That's great. And we're going to work to get a link to the directors of academic engagement and we'll post it in the chat. That way you can explore it a little bit more. One of the questions that came up is, will I automatically be enrolled into the discussion/lab section for my math class and EGR 101, or do I need to enroll in those separately?
That's a good question. There are many classes that you actually have to enroll in the discussion and then you will enroll also in the lecture, but I am not sure if those two are some of those. Like I said, I mean, if you know you have to be in the lecture and the lab and you only have that one component in your schedule, then you have to enroll in the other. But I think, for example, math, you would enroll in the lab section and be enrolled in the lecture as well. That's my understanding.
All right, next question. Is it better to push your social science electives back and do your major specific classes instead so you can take those social science classes during study abroad?
So during study abroad, I do recommend having more electives so you have more flexibility in courses that are available in other institutions. We that's a conversation we can have, like I said, a year before to select those classes. My general guideline is more, those free electives and social sciences can also help you balance the course load. So if you can take 3 STEM classes and 1 social science, I think that's great. There are some students that decide to take 4 STEM classes. I think it depends on the classes, how many have labs and discussion, because there might be conflicts in schedule. So you can do either way. But in terms of study abroad, we have time to plan. Your first year is really structured, and I know you don't have a lot of flexibility, but these are conversations that will continue, when you come to Duke. We'll have these discussions first with your faculty advisor before registering for classes in the following semester. And also you can make an appointment with your academic dean and develop a 4-year plan.
Great. There's a question in here. I'm gonna broaden it up a little bit because they're talking about having to decide between 2 levels of chemistry, so specifically organic chemistry and regular chemistry. And the question at the end is there a syllabus out there to see the difference? Like if you have to choose between 2 levels of a course, how would you go about doing that, and what are some resources to help figure out where you should be placed?
Yes, so I'm going to provide you with a link to the chemistry department has a website that includes placement guidelines based on your AP credits and information. So I would say refer to that website. The math department also has a similar website, and computer science. So those are good to determine which is the right course for you.
Great. Next question is, if I audit a course over the summer, will I still be able to take the course in another semester?
Do not audit a course in another institution that you're planning to take at Duke.
Short and sweet, right to the point. Next question is, what are some resources we should definitely take advantage of during our first year at Duke / in Pratt?
Resources that are good. Well, thank you for the reminder. So remember about the Academic Resource Center. They have a lot of resources that are very useful for students. And for example, they have tutoring, they have math study groups, they have a lot of assistance, especially in the fundamental classes that our students are taking during the first year. So please visit their website for more information.
Oh, and I see that Grace has
right there.
Yeah, Grace has added the link into the chat so you can explore it a little bit. She was very quick with that. All right. Oh, okay. There's a clarification on the auditing question. To clarify, I'm auditing the course at Duke. Will I be eligible to take the course in another semester? So can they audit a course and then later enroll in that same course here at Duke?
They cannot. So I would say to that student, please reach out, visit one of our drop-in advising sessions so we can discuss, what the plans are and which course it is, so we can provide them with better guidance. Yeah.
Thank you for that clarification.
Yeah.
All right. We only have a few minutes left. I don't see any more questions in the Q&A. So unless we have any other pressing questions, we might wrap up a few minutes early today. Any other information that you would want to share? You've mentioned the drop-in advising a couple of times. That's what you shared at the beginning, correct? Okay. And is that something that they can find on your website?
We sent them a link, an email with all the links to our Zoom meetings and dates. So they can go back and refer to those links. For general questions, if they can't find the answer, they can just email Pratt Advising, pratt-advising@duke.edu, and one of us will answer it for them.
Awesome. All right, well, I don't see any other questions, so we're gonna close out a little early today. Thank you so much for joining us today, and for our two folks behind the scenes who have been answering questions and looking things up for us. You definitely kept us on our toes with what time does ad drop begin and registration end. So thank you for asking questions, and thank you for joining us today, and we will see you next time.
Yes, thank you so much. I hope to see you in person in the fall.
Bye, everybody.